Hi, and welcome to a new section in this course. In this section, we are going to focus on the individual components that make up this Arduino car. Just want to demonstrate how you can use each one of the components individually. So for example, we'll have a look at the motor controller that you see right here and the motors and how you can use Arduino sketches to control the motion. A couple of other things I can show you here is the infrared sensor. I'll show you how you can use that alongside the infrared remote control to control the car. And I just happen to also have a joystick here. So I'm going to show you in a separate lecture in this course how to use the joystick. But I wanted to kickstart this section with just a look at the chassis that is going to hold together all of these components. So essentially, it's the central component of our car. As I said, the component that we use to mount all other components together. And it's just one thing. It's just this acrylic black plastic piece that you see here that I've got the other components mounted on. In this example, you see that I have already mounted several other components on the chassis. I'm going to show you how to do the actual assembly later on in this course, but I just wanted to show you a view of what the chassis looks like. And in this particular example, the components that you see mounted, some of those components do come from the 3-in-1 kit from SunFounder, but I've got a couple of other things that don't. So for example, flip this car over and you can see that down from the bottom view, there's the two DC motors plus the 9-volt battery that powers the motors plus the Arduino. And I've got the caster here in the front to give us direction and the two wheels that are attached directly to the motors. And that's what's on the underside. On the top side, you'll see a couple of interesting things. There's the motor controller. Again, this is part of the kit. The Arduino Uno is a compatible board that is also part of the kit, and that's mounted on top of plastic spaces like this. Around the back, I've got a mini breadboard. In this case, I used a cable tie to secure the breadboard onto the chassis. And there is the photoresist. I think I've taken it out. Yeah. So there's just an LED here. Apart from these components that ship with the 3-in-1 kit, I thought that it would be useful to have posts like this, or like adapters, essentially, or holders like this that I designed in Tinkercad and printed on my 3D printer. And what this particular post allows me to do is to mount the remote control wire. You can see, to give you a closer look. So here's the cable that at the end, the other end, I have connected the joystick. In one of the examples later in this course, I'll show you how you can use the joystick to control the car in a wired configuration. There's also wireless options, but in this case, I'm going to go with wired. And in my first couple of experiments, of course, the cable was long enough to be dragging on the floor. And I decided that it was not a good idea having the cable dragging on the floor. So I needed to lift it up a little so that it sits up higher and I can then control it without the danger of the cable being tangled in the wheels. So that's one application. And then another application, when I was prototyping the infrared receiver, had to do with the location of the infrared receiver. So in this example, I've got the infrared receiver connected to the Arduino on the breadboard. And of course, its optimal viewpoint location where the remote control will be positioned will be behind. So this position will be behind the car. So if you happen to be on the front side of the car, then the receiver won't be able to receive the infrared signals unless they happen to bounce off another surface, and then they can be seen by the receiver. And I thought that probably a better location for this receiver would be a bit higher up. So I printed a second adapter, second post with this little component up here, top here. So I reasoned that if I can position the receiver up higher, say around here, I'll be able to control the car from a much wider range of angles around the car. And the way that I did that was to just make use of the same 3D printed part. I've got mounting holes up along the post, so I can use things like cable ties to secure the cable against it so it doesn't move around, but also to secure components like this. Just plug it on the very top mounting hole, and then any other components such as an infrared receiver can go up the top. So all of that comes from the benefit of using a chassis like this, which has pre-drilled mounting holes that you can use to mount the various components, whether those come with the Sunfounder kit or you can just add your own components and your own design and enhance the original design. So chassis like that, I find them very useful. And I just wanted to give you one more example. So this is another example of a similar concept here. This is from one of my other Arduino robot courses. This is a self-driving robot. And I used a similar concept type of chassis. It's a little bit more involved because it has two plastic plates. You connect them with those spaces, and there's a little bit of space in between that you can use for things like a battery pack, for example. In this case, I decided to put it on the top, but I could have used a different kind of battery and mounted in the middle to allow more space on the top, easier to access for me to tinker with and prototype. So again, similar concept. There's lots of openings that you can use to mount spaces, mount components. In this case, to secure the battery pack on the chassis, I just used screws with a rubber band, and that's enough. You can see here in the front, I've got a servo motor that allows me to control the direction where the ultrasonic sensor is pointing to, and that is directly secured on the chassis with simple spaces. There's nothing fancy here. And on the underside, in this case, in this example, instead of using DC motors, I'm using continuous rotation servo motors because I wanted to have a bit more control, fine control of the movement of the motors. And a continuous rotation servo motor can do that a little bit better as opposed to a regular DC motor. So you can control the angle of the turn of the wheel much easier. All right, so that's a little comparison between different chassis. Of course, if you have the one that came with Sunfounder, you can use that, or otherwise you can substitute with something similar. Now, just the last thing that I wanted to show you here before we move on is the provision for the Arduino Uno. So there are mounting holes here on the chassis. There's 4 mounting holes. And there's another one right here. I'm going to show you this in more detail when we do the assembly, that supports a Arduino Uno or original or compatible board. And in this case, you can see the Sunfounder Arduino Uno compatible device. It comes with the 3-in-1 Sunfounder kit. But of course, you can use any other Arduino compatible device. Here's my genuine Arduino Uno. It fits perfectly. I was also experimenting with other Arduino options, such as the Arduino Mega 2560. Obviously, the Arduino Mega 2560 has got an Arduino Uno compatible side in terms of the layout of the pins. So that left side is compatible, and it's got an extended side on the right side. So I was just looking around, and this can actually work almost as a Arduino Uno would on this particular kit. The 2 mounting holes on the left side match perfectly with the Arduino Uno, and you also have another 2 on the other side right here and here, and those also fit perfectly. So an Arduino Mega 2560 will also work, and you're going to have the extended part on the right side, which clears the wheel, so there's not going to be any interference. So if you happen to have an Arduino Mega 2560, that will also work with this kit, and it will give you a few additional pins to work with. Okay, so that's it with this lecture. Just wanted to show you what the chassis looks like and what are some of the things that you can do with it. I'm going to show you how to assemble the kit later on in this course. In the next lecture, I'm going to quickly review your microcontroller options, and then we're going to move on to have a look at the individual components, such as a joystick, the DC motor controller, and the motors, the sensors, etc.